Hello, welcome to Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why, and how of newspaper reading. Today, we are going to discuss the important issues appearing in the New Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 8th March 2019. The news to be discussed has been presented on the screen, and timestamping for the same has been provided in the description box below. Now, let's start our today's discussion. The first news appears as a lead article on page number 10. It says, the Imperial Cabinet and an acquiescent court. The Supreme Court has squandered the chance to rein in an increasingly powerful central executive. Now, this article highlights about the important judgments which came in the last 6 months by the Honorable Supreme Court of India. And some of these important judgments can be said to be with respect to Sabrimala judgment, where the Supreme Court allowed entry of women into the temple. Case with respect to Aadhaar, where the Supreme Court of India upheld the constitutional validity of Aadhaar. However, it struck down certain provisions of Aadhaar which allowed private parties to use Aadhaar details. The next important judgment was with respect to Section 377 of Indian Penal Code, where the Supreme Court decriminalized homosexuality and allowed same-sex relationship. Further, the Supreme Court of India made the right to privacy as a part of fundamental right. So this article starts by talking about these important judgments given by the Honorable Supreme Court. However, the author in this article has specifically mentioned about two judgments, as according to this article, these two judgments in a way define the structure of the constitution and also impacts the functioning of the government. And these two judgments are with respect to the controversy between Lieutenant Governor of Delhi as well as the Chief Minister of Delhi, and the decision of the Supreme Court to pass Aadhaar bill as a money bill. Because according to the author, federalism and bicameralism are two important parts of the Constitution of India, and it also defines the functioning of the government. So in this article, let us understand about these two judgments, that is with respect to passing of Aadhaar as money bill and also with respect to the relation between Chief Minister and Council of Ministers of Delhi with that of the LG of Delhi. Now this topic becomes extremely important both from your prelims as well as from your mains point of view, as in your prelims this gets covered under Indian polity and governance, and in your mains it gets covered under GS paper 2, specifically under Indian constitution as well as functions and responsibility of union, including federal structure and devolution of powers. Now these are some of the questions asked by UPSC in previous years. In 2018, the question was whether the Supreme Court judgment can settle the political tussle between Lieutenant Governor and elected government of Delhi. Examine. Further, in 2016, this particular question was asked. Discuss the essentials of 69th Constitutional Amendment Act and anomalies, if any, that have led to recent reported conflicts between the elected representatives and the institution of Lieutenant Governor in the administration of Delhi. Do you think that this will give rise to a new trend in the functioning of Indian federal politics? So we see the issue of administration of Delhi has great significance as questions have been asked repeatedly by UPSC. Further, a question was directly asked on the federal principle. It says that though the federal principle is dominant in our constitution and that principle is one of its basic features, but it is equally true that federalism under the Indian constitution leans in favor of a strong center, a feature that militates against the concept of strong federalism. Discuss. So this is a very important question asked on the concept of federalism. So in this topic, one must understand the relation between center state with respect to Indian constitution. Further, with respect to passing of bills as money bill, the author has also highlighted the restricted role of members of parliament, not only with respect to passing of bill as a money bill, but also with respect to issuing of whips by respective political parties on any particular issue. As you can see, a question on this exact ground was asked in the year 2013. The question was, role of individual MPs has diminished over the years, and as a result, healthy constructive debates on policy issues are not usually witnessed. How far can this be attributed to the anti-defection law, which was legislated but with a different intention? As we will see, the author has talked exactly about the same concept, that issuing of whips in a way limit the participation of members of parliament as they are not free enough to air their view. So we see that various questions have been asked not only on the concept of federalism but also on the concept of center state relationship, along with participation of members of parliament to discuss on various issues along with the anti-defection law. Moving further, various questions have also been asked on this topic in your prelims examination. Now, this question was asked in 2018 with respect to money bill. In 2017, different questions were asked. One with respect to Indian federalism, with respect to parliamentary form of government, with respect to judicial review, as well as with respect to democracy. Further questions were also asked with respect to passing of bills in the year 2016, and these two questions relate to passing of bills and powers of Lok Sabha as well as Rajya Sabha. So we will try to solve all these previous UPSC questions after discussing what the article has to talk about federalism and bicameralism. The article says that citizens' rights and freedoms depends not only on the fundamental rights chapter as provided in the constitution and judiciary's willingness to enforce it, but also on other means, such as distribution of power between state organs in order to avoid this concentration of power in one single hand or in one single institution. As this distribution of power also act as a check and balance on different organs of the institution, and these checks and balances also ensures that citizens' rights or citizens' fundamental rights are secured as power is not concentrated in one hand or in one institution. Now, with respect to money bill, this article highlights about passing of Aadhaar as money bill and says that this impacted or affected the concept of bicameralism because it did not allow the bill to be scrutinized by the Rajya Sabha. As we know that Rajya Sabha do not have any power with respect to money bill. Now, this article explains that lawmaking is a balanced and deliberative process and not an exercise of majoritarianism. As the crucial purpose of Rajya Sabha is to act as a check and balance upon Lok Sabha, as it discusses a bill and also has power to vote with respect to ordinary bill. And in the process of discussion, it raises and highlights important concerns with respect to any bill which might have been overlooked by the Lok Sabha. So, in a way, it not only highlights important concerns with respect to a bill, but also scrutinizes various aspects of the ordinary bill. Now, this article also mentions about 10th schedule and says that with coming into effect of this 10th schedule with respect to anti-defection, which came from 52nd constitutional amendment, the role of Rajya Sabha has become even more important. So, according to the 10th schedule, a member can be disqualified if he does not vote as per directions issued by the political party. Now, as you can see, the 10th schedule talks about disqualification on grounds if a person votes or abstains from voting contrary to any direction issued by the political party. So, it effectively means that members have to vote according to the directions issued by the political party and they cannot vote according to their own understanding or their own reason. So, in cases where there is majority of a single party, the executive can effectively rule as a decree. So, in such cases of brute majoritarianism, it is the Rajya Sabha which acts as a check and balance on the Lok Sabha. But the author mentions that if every bill is converted into a money bill through the concept that money is taken from the Consolidated Fund of India, then it takes away the right of the Rajya Sabha with respect to further scrutiny of the bill and also with respect to discussing and highlighting important concerns in a particular bill. So it is this what the author has effectively talked about with respect to money bill. Now, with respect to National Capital Territory of Delhi, a 5-judge constitution bench of Supreme Court made it clear that wherever the constitutional text was capable of more than one interpretation, the court will always favor an understanding that increases democratic accountability. So, we can say that power lies with the government that has been directly elected by the people. In the case of National Capital Territory of Delhi, it is although a union territory but also has a legislative assembly whose members are directly elected by the people. Now, this provision of National Capital Territory of Delhi was added in the Constitution through 69th Amendment, and the provision is about Article 239AA. So, according to the decision of the Supreme Court, the Delhi government has superior powers than the appointed Lieutenant Governor. However, with respect to certain state-specific issues, primarily services, the matter has been referred to the larger bench, which will decide that who has jurisdiction with respect to services, that is whether the LG has jurisdiction over services, that is with respect to transfer and posting of officer, or the Lieutenant Governor of Delhi has jurisdiction. So with respect to services, the matter as of now is sub judice. So these were the two important provisions as highlighted in this article. Firstly, with respect to money bill, and secondly, with respect to federalism, specifically with respect to sharing of powers between LG and Chief Minister of National Capital Territory of Delhi. So after understanding both these issues, let us go back to the previous prelims question and try to answer them. Now, this question was asked in the year 2018 with respect to money bill. The question was regarding money bill, which of the following statement is not correct? So, before attempting this question, let's go through the provisions of money bill. Now, money bill has been defined under Article 110 of the Indian Constitution. It says that a bill shall be deemed to be a money bill if it contains only provisions dealing with all or any of the following matters, namely imposition, abolition, remission, alteration, or regulation of any tax, the regulation of the borrowing of money or giving of any guarantee by the government of India, or the amendment of law with respect to financial obligation undertaken by the government of India. C. The custody of consolidated fund or contingency fund of India, the payment of monies into or withdrawal of monies from any such fund. Further, the appropriation of monies out of consolidated fund of India. Next, the declaring of any expenditure to be expenditure charged on the consolidated fund of India or increasing the amount of any such expenditure. Next, the receipt of money on account of consolidated fund of India or the public accounts of India, or custody or issue of such money, or the audit of the accounts of the union or of the state. Now, this question provides for various options, but if you go through these options carefully, you will see that this particular option says that a money bill is concerned with the appropriation of monies out of the contingency fund of India. You can see that it says that appropriation of monies out of consolidated fund of India and not contingency fund of India. So on this note, was the correct answer because this statement was incorrect with respect to money bill. Now moving to year 2017, the question asked was, which of the following is not a feature of Indian federalism? Options were A. There is an independent judiciary in India. B. Powers have been clearly divided between center and states. This is a feature. This is also a feature of Indian federalism. C. The federating units have been given unequal representation in the Rajya Sabha. Yes, it is based on the population. D. It is a result of an agreement among federating units. No, this statement is incorrect. So since they were asking that which of the following is not a feature of Indian federalism, so in this, D is the correct answer. Next question, it says the main advantage of parliamentary form of government is that. Options were executive and legislature work independently. No. B. It provides continuity of policy and is more efficient. Not really. C. The executive remains responsible to the legislature. Yes, this is what was exactly discussed with respect to responsibility of the Rajya Sabha with respect to scrutinizing any bill. So in this, C becomes the correct answer. Now these two questions were also asked in 2017. The questions were, in India, judicial review implies. In this, the correct answer was A, that is, power of the judiciary to pronounce upon the constitutionality of laws and executive orders. Let's also go through the other options so as to understand and differentiate between the right and wrong answers. B. The power of judiciary to question the wisdom of the laws enacted by the legislatures. No. C. The power of judiciary to review all the legislative enactments before they are assented to by the president. No. D. The power of judiciary to review its own judgments given earlier in similar or different cases. Considering A and D, A seems to be the more appropriate answer with respect to D. So in this, the correct answer in this particular question was A, that is power of judiciary to pronounce upon the constitutionality of laws and executive orders. Next, democracy's superior virtue lies in the fact that it calls into activity. Options were the intelligence and character of ordinary men and women, the methods for strengthening executive leadership, a superior individual with dynamism and vision, a band of dedicated party workers. Of all these options, A was the most appropriate answer. So, in this, A was the right answer. Now, these questions were with respect to passing of bills. It says, which of the following statement is correct? A bill pending in Lok Sabha lapses on its prorogation. No, a bill pending in Lok Sabha do not lapse on prorogation. B. A bill pending in Rajya Sabha which has not been passed by the Lok Sabha shall not lapse on dissolution of the Lok Sabha. Yes, this is correct. In this, B was the correct answer. That is 2 only. Next, it says that the Parliament of India acquires the power to legislate on any item in the state list in the national interest if a resolution to that effect is passed by the Lok Sabha by simple majority of its total membership? No. Lok Sabha by majority of not less than two-thirds of its total membership? No. Raj Sabha by a simple majority of its total membership? No. Rajya Sabha by a majority of not less than two-thirds of its members present and voting. Yes, this statement was correct. So in this, D was the correct answer. Now this particular question was with respect to Article 249 of the Indian Constitution. As you can see, Article 249 says power of Parliament to legislate with respect to matter in state list in national interest. It says the Council of States, that is Raj Sabha, has declared by resolution supported by not less than two-thirds of the members present and voting that it is necessary or expedient in the national interest that Parliament should make laws with respect to any matter enumerated in the state list specified in the resolution. It shall be lawful for the Parliament to make laws for the whole or any part of the territory of India with respect to that matter. So in this, D was the correct answer. So we understand that various issues which appeared in this article have been asked by UPSC in different formats. So this particular article with respect to prelims as well as your mains examination becomes extremely important. So in this news discussion, try to understand the important concepts as highlighted in this article. With this, let's move on to our next news discussion. Next news appears as an editorial on page number 10. It says, Breathing Clean. Political will is integral to the tackling of India's hazardous air pollution. Now this editorial talks about the IQ Air Visual 2018 World Air Quality Report, which was published in collaboration with Greenpeace. And this report underscores the fact that Delhi remains an extremely hazardous city to live because of its extreme air pollution. Now this editorial highlights that Delhi contains very high amount of fine particulate matters, that is PM 2.5. Now as per WHO regulation, that is World Health Organization, there should be not more than 10 micrograms per cubic meter for PM 2.5, whereas in Delhi it is as high as 113.5 micrograms per cubic meter, whereas in adjacent Gurugram it is 135.8 micrograms per cubic meter. So Delhi as well as the NCR regions has very high amount of PM 2.5 particulate matters. So we see that Delhi and its surrounding areas have very high concentration of, and it is because of this Delhi has been ranked as one of the worst in terms of air pollution metrics in India. Now this topic in your prelims examination becomes a part of environment, and in your mains it gets covered under GS paper 3, specifically under environmental pollution. So this editorial says that certain measures which have been taken by the government so far are not effective. It mentions that the launch of National Clean Air Program in 102 cities talks about a long-term mitigation but does not talks about certain immediate remediation with respect to containing air pollution. So it says that a National Clean Air Program for 102 cities and towns talks about long-term benefits of mitigation programs beyond 2024, but it does not talk about any dramatic reduction in near-term pollution. Further, it also says that the monitoring of this air quality in real time across cities and towns is not adequate, and steps should be taken to improve the quality of air monitoring in cities. Now, as per a commissioned report by the Ministry of Heavy Industries and Public Enterprises, it mentions about some of the dusty sources of air pollution in cities, such as pollution with respect to road construction, construction sites, and it mentions that bare soil added about 42% of the coarse particulate matter, that is PM10, especially during summer. Whereas in winter, pollution due to PM10 was as high as significant 31%. Further, it says that pollution of PM10 varied between 15 to 18% through transport sector. Further, vehicles also contributed roughly around 18 to 23% of these particulates, whereas biomass burning was estimated to make up roughly around 15 to 22%, and dusty sources comprised of 34% during summer. So basically this report categorized pollution through different sources, specifically with respect to particulate matter. So this editorial in the end also highlights that what should be done in order to reduce such level of pollution from the atmosphere. So the first point is with respect to induction of more electric vehicles in the transport fleet. It says that the Delhi government, which has done well to decide on inducting 1,000 electric buses, should speed up the plan and turn its entire fleet green. And this step by the Delhi government must also be replicated by other state governments. Further, the editorial mentions about transition to electric vehicles, especially with the support of Center's Program for Adoption of Electric Vehicles, that is FAME. As we know that recently the central government has allocated more fund under the FAME scheme. It then says that the Ministry of Environment should work out on a plan to cut down nitrogen and sulfur emissions from industries in a time-bound manner. So effectively the editorial mentions about cutting down nitrogen oxides and sulfur dioxides from industries in a time-bound manner. So these are the priority measures which needs to be taken in order to get urban India out of the red zone, that is extremely hazardous zone with respect to air pollution. Now this topic was also discussed in the DNS video dated 6 March 2019 by Mangal sir in the title Polluted Cities. So to know more about the particulate matters including PM10 and PM2.5, you can always refer to this DNS video dated 6th March titled Polluted Cities. Now after a discussion, let's go through this particular question asked by UPSC prelims in the year 2016. The question was, in the cities of our country, which among the following atmospheric gases are normally considered in calculating the value of air quality index? Options were carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide and methane. Now this picture mentions about the AQI category, pollutants and health breakpoints. In this picture you can see the various pollutants which are PM10, PM2.5, nitrogen dioxide, ozone, carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, ammonia and lead. However, we do not find carbon dioxide as well as methane. So all these three are part of air quality index. So in this, B was the correct answer, that is 2, 3 and 4 only. So after this discussion, let's move on to the next news analysis. The next news also appears as an editorial on page number 10. It says, probing the press, the Official Secrets Act can't be an instrument to censor embarrassing media revelations. Now this editorial highlights about the arguments presented by the Attorney General of India in the Supreme Court on account of stolen documents on Rafale deal. The questions with respect to Rafale deal have been raised on the following grounds, namely with respect to parallel negotiations being conducted by the Prime Minister's office, absence of any bank guarantee with respect to the vendor, that is Dassault, and the pricing of 36 Rafale jets to be purchased in a flyaway condition. So on this note, the editorial says that the publication of these documents is a legitimate right of press, including their freedom. So with respect to freedom of press, threat or intimidation of criminal investigation under the Official Secrets Act of 1923 is quite unfortunate as mentioned in this editorial. Further, the Attorney General also mentioned in the court that the court should not rely on such stolen documents. However, the Chief Justice of India pointed out that the manner of procurement of document is immaterial. What is more important is relevance of the material with respect to adjudication. So on this note, in this analysis, let us learn certain basic facts with respect to Official Secrets Act 1923, including some of the historical events with respect to this particular act. Now in your prelims examination, this topic forms a part of history as well as polity. And in your mains, it gets covered under GS paper 1 specifically under modern history and under GS paper 2 under governance. Now the Official Secrets Act 1923 has been seldom used against the press. The law primarily targets officials who are entrusted with important documents, codes or materials which are important to national security. However, Section 5 of the Official Secrets Act provides that it criminalizes voluntary receiving and possessing such documents if these documents have been given to these people in contravention of the Act. So, it is with this Section 5 of the Official Secrets Act that the government has threatened the press with respect to releasing such information. Even the Law Commission in its 1971 report had said that the wordings of this Act is quite wide. However, the Commission left to the government to decide against the prosecution if the information leak did not materially impact state security. So after understanding certain basic facts with respect to Official Secrets Act, let us also understand and find out about its historical roots. It says that the OSO has its roots in the British colonial era, and the Indian Official Secrets Act of 1904 was enacted during the time of Lord Curzon, who was the Viceroy of India from 1899 to 1905. And this particular information with respect to Official Secrets Act 1904 under the era of Lord Curzon becomes very important from your prelims perspective. It says that the Indian Official Secrets Act 1904 was the amended version of Indian Official Secrets Act of 1889, and it was brought in a time when a large number of powerful newspapers had emerged in several languages across India. The newspaper in those times opposed fierce British policies, created political consciousness among Indians, and also made them aware with respect to extreme police brutalities. So it was on this note that the British government enacted the Indian Official Secrets Act 1904 to regulate the press in those times. So it says that one of the main purposes of this act was to muzzle the voice of nationalist publications. It further says that in 1923, a newer version of the Official Secrets Act was notified, and this newer version was extended to all matters of secrecy and confidentiality in the governance in the country. So we see that Official Secrets Act has a historical presence in the country, especially with respect to muzzling of press freedom. Now this Official Secrets Act broadly deals with two aspects, namely spying or espionage, which is dealt in section 3 of the act, and disclosure of other secret information of the government, which is dealt in section 5 of the act. Now as per the act, secret information can be any official code, password, sketch, plan, model, article, note, document, or any information. And since this definition is so wide and so vague, it is often argued that this law, which has its historical roots in the colonial times, is in direct conflict with the present Right to Information Act. As under Section 5 of the Official Secrets Act, both the person communicating the information and the other person receiving the information can be punished by the prosecuting agency. So it is this wide ambit of this Official Secrets Act, even in present times, make this act extremely dangerous, especially with respect to freedom of the press. Now, after understanding some of the important aspects of Official Secrets Act, we should also know when the Official Secret Act was used against some of the persons. These are the three examples. First, it says the most recent conviction under this act came in 2018 when a Delhi court held former diplomat Madhuri Gupta, who had served at the Indian High Commission in Islamabad, and she was held guilty for passing sensitive information to Pakistan ISI, and for this she was sentenced to 3 years in jail. In another high-profile case, Iftikhar Gilani, who was a journalist in the Kashmir Times, was arrested in June 2002, and he was also charged under the Official Secrets Act for allegedly possessing secret documents relating to the deployment of troops in the Kashmir Valley. However, the state of Jammu and Kashmir later withdrew the case. Further, in 2017, journalist Poonam Agarwal was also charged under the law for conducting a sting operation on army official who criticized the Sahayak system in the army. So these are some of the examples where Official Secrets Act has been used against certain people. So in this analysis, we understood certain basic facts with respect to Official Secrets Act as well as the historical roots with respect to Official Secrets Act. And this topic becomes very important from your upcoming prelims examination. With this, let's move on to our next news analysis. The next news appears on page number 15. It says, Cabinet empowers alternative mechanism on divestment. Now, the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs has approved the procedure and mechanism for strategic disinvestment of the central public sector enterprises and has empowered the alternative mechanism to take decisions regarding the sale of shares, including number of shares to be sold as well as the price of such shares. So this topic of CCA empowering AM on disinvestment becomes a part of Indian economy in your prelims examination. And in your mains, this topic gets covered under GS paper 3. Now the term strategic disinvestment would imply the sale of substantial portion of the government shareholding of a central public sector enterprises of up to 50% or such higher percentage as the competent authority may determine. And the sale of substantial portion of the government shareholding will come along with the transfer of management control. So strategic disinvestment refers to sale of shares along with transfer of management control. So in this news, the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs, chaired by the Prime Minister, has approved delegation of these terms to the alternative mechanism in all cases of strategic disinvestment of central public sector enterprises. And this can be delegated to the alternative mechanism after the CCEA, that is Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs, has given in principle approval for strategic disinvestment. So this process has been delegated to the alternative mechanism in order to speed up the disinvestment process. And this alternative mechanism comprises of the finance minister, road transport minister and representative minister from the relevant ministry. And the cabinet has also empowered this alternative mechanism with regard to disinvestment matters. Now the alternative mechanisms gets power for disinvestment with respect to quantum of shares to be transacted, mode of sale and final pricing of the transaction, as well as laying down certain principles, guidelines, etc. for such pricing, including the selection of strategic partner or buyer and also laying down the terms and conditions for such sale. Further, the alternative mechanism is also empowered to decide on proposal of CGD. Now this CGD refers to Core Group of Secretaries on Disinvestment and it is headed by the Cabinet Secretary. With regards to timing, price, the terms as well as conditions of sales and any other related issue to the transaction. So important point to be noted in this news is with respect to strategic disinvestment, which includes sale of share along with transfer of management, as well as the core group of secretaries on disinvestment, which is headed by the Cabinet Secretary. And also the fact that the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs has approved delegation of these issues to the alternative mechanism. And these alternative mechanism comprises of the finance minister, the road transport minister, as well as the respective minister from the relevant ministry. With this, let's move on to our next news discussion. The next news appears on page number 15. It says, large hydro projects get renewable energy status. Cabinet approves new policy. So as per this news, Union Cabinet chaired by Prime Minister has approved measures to promote hydropower sector. Now these policies include declaring large hydropower projects as part of non-solar renewable purchase obligation. Now this topic in your prelims examination gets covered under environment and ecology and in your mains gets covered under GS paper 3. Only 45,400 megawatt has been utilized with respect to hydropower out of the potential of 1,45,320 megawatt. And only about 10,000 megawatt of hydropower has been added in the last 10 years. So this policy is with respect to the promotion of hydropower. However, the issue is that the DISCOMs are reluctant to sign power purchase agreement with these hydropowers due to high tariffs. So this is one of the constraints with respect to development of these hydropowers in India. So with respect to hydropower, it should be noted that so far only smaller hydropower projects of less than 25 megawatt in capacity were categorized as renewable energy. But the government has now decided that large hydropower projects shall be declared as renewable energy source. This becomes a very important information from your prelims examination as well. Further, the news mentions that the removal of this distinction, large hydro projects will be included as separate category under the non-solar renewable purchase obligation policy of the Government of India. As under this policy, power purchasers will have to source a portion of electricity from large hydro projects. So in a way, this will increase demand to produce electricity specifically from hydropower projects. Further, this increased demand of producing electricity from hydropower will also promote socio-economic development of the region by providing employment in the power sector. Now, an important aspect with respect to hydropower is that it provides water security, irrigation, as well as flood moderation benefits, apart from the socio-economic development aspect, and in a way also promotes employment opportunities and boosts tourism in the region. Further, the importance of hydropowers can also be understood from the fact that India has targeted to add 160 gigawatt of intermittent solar and wind power by the year 2022 and 40% of the total capacity from non-fossil fuel sources by the year 2030 to honor its nationally determined contribution for climate change. So it's also based on these commitments that the government of India is promoting hydropower. So this particular news of the cabinet where large hydro projects get renewable energy status becomes very important from our examination perspective. With this, let's move on to our next news discussion. The next news also appears on page number 15. It says scheme to rebate embedded taxes for garments gets nod, and this will help exports of apparels made up zero rated. So this news mentions that the textile garments included various embedded taxes in the form of indirect taxes, and this increased the price of the textile garments when it was exported to foreign countries. So the government has decided to give rebate on these embedded taxes. Now this topic in your prelims examination forms a part of Indian economy. So it says that the Union Cabinet has approved the scheme to rebate state and central embedded taxes to support the textile sector, where it mentions that at present the textile industry is supported under the scheme for rebate of state levies. However, despite these rebate, these embedded taxes continue to remain in the cost of exports. So this is what the government is trying to rebate through this particular scheme. So the cabinet has provided for the scheme to rebate all embedded state and central taxes or levies for the textile sector. So these rebate of state levies will reduce indirect taxes levied by states such as stamp duty, petroleum tax, electricity duty, and even mandi tax that were earlier embedded in the export of textiles. That is, these taxes were earlier a part of the exporting cost. Suppose rupees 100 is the entire cost of textile garment, but the embedded tax is of rupees 5. So the government will now reduce this rupees 5 from the export of such textile garment. So this is what it is saying, that it will offset the indirect taxes levied by states such as stamp duty, petroleum tax, electricity duty, and even mandi tax. So this proposal of reduction of embedded tax is expected to make the textile sector more competitive, and this will boost India's competitiveness in the exports market, specifically with respect to textile sector. And this will also ensure equitable and inclusive growth of textile and apparel sector. Thus, this particular decision of the cabinet with respect to giving rebate on embedded tax on garment sector becomes very important from our examination perspective. Now, these two forms your practice question number 1 and practice question number 2. What you can do is to take a pause of 5 seconds. First, which among the following can be considered as part of strategic disinvestment of government PSUs? First, transfer of a block of shares to the private sector. Yes, this is correct. Second, transfer of management control to the private sector. Yes, this is also correct. As we had seen that with respect to strategic disinvestment, it included transfer of shares along with transfer of management control. So in this, both the options are correct. So in this, C is the correct answer. Moving to the next question, it says, consider the following statements relating to alternative mechanism of disinvestment. Options are, it is headed by the Prime Minister. No, it is incorrect. Second, it has been empowered to give in principle approval for the disinvestment of the PSUs. No, only Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs is empowered to give in principle approval for disinvestment of PSUs and not the alternative mechanisms of disinvestment. So in this, both the statements are incorrect. So here D is the correct answer, that is neither 1 nor 2. These are the two next practice questions for your day. What you can do is to take a pause of 5 seconds. Third, the Indian Official Secrets Act 1904 was enacted during. The options are Lord Ripon, Lord Curzon, Charles Metcalfe, and Lord William Bentinck. So in this, the correct answer is Lord Curzon. Now, this particular question was also asked in the UPSC prelims of 2017. The question is, the Parliament exercises control over the functions of the Council of Ministers through. Options are adjournment motion, question hour, and supplementary question. In this, all the three are correct answer. Hence, in this, D is the correct answer. With this, we come to an end to discussion of today's newspaper. Let's move on to the question for the day.